Hey guys, it's Becca and welcome back to another video on my channel. As you can tell by the title, this is going to be a little different than other videos I have filmed and put out because it's a little more serious. It's something that I'm sure a lot of you know I have, but I don't really talk about. But I wanted to kind of explain why I haven't been talking about it, my story behind it, and just a couple tips and tricks that have helped me recently. First, a couple disclaimers. Number one, I have not been diagnosed with anxiety. I have not been to a doctor who has said you have anxiety, here's medicine. It's more just something that I've always struggled with. Number two, I do not see a therapist or take any medication or anything like that. This is all just something that I have dealt with personally, and I'm now telling you guys, if that makes sense. But no, I've not been diagnosed. I have not gone to a doctor. I've not taken medicine. I don't talk to a therapist. Anything like that. This is just my experience. I'm not saying that my experience is the same as your experience. I'm not saying that what works for me is going to work for you. I just wanted this channel to be somewhere that is very open with us, and I want you guys to know about me, and I want to know about you guys, and I felt like this was something that I was not keeping from you guys, but it was a big part of my life and still is, and it was something I wasn't sharing, and I want to share it with you guys because I want this to be open communication. I want to be very transparent, and I want to be able to share, you know, the good times and the bad times, where if I'm panicking or feeling anxious, I want to be able to tell you guys, and you guys can kind of understand why I'm feeling that way and what it stems from, if that makes sense. This is kind of a hard video to make because I don't really talk about this unless I'm feeling anxious or explaining how I'm feeling to someone, so bear with me. It might be a little weirdly cut, kind of shaky. I just don't really know where I want to go with it, but anyways, let's just start at the very, very beginning of kind of like my anxiety story. I was always a very anxious kid. I would worry about like the littlest things, and I don't know, it was kind of like affecting my everyday life when I was even just a little kid, but I didn't know what it was. And as a kid, if you're feeling scared or worried, you don't really have a word to explain that. It's kind of just like, oh, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling scared. It's not necessarily anxiety because you're only like 9 or 10. You don't really know how to describe what you're feeling. My mom would even tell me just like I would worry about the littlest things. And luckily that kind of part went away, so I don't worry about every little thing now. But back then I couldn't really sleep. It was just always something that I had. I was always a worrisome kid, and I just got in my own head, which anxiety is a mindset. The definition of anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. So obviously as a kid, your whole life is uncertain, but even just little things would make me worried. I didn't connect it that was anxiety until recently. So yeah, just saying, I've always had anxiety, I've always been nervous, and then there are certain things that trigger my anxiety. So when something's gonna happen that I don't know how it's gonna turn out, I get very anxious. So a big example of that was, I vlogged it, but it was Mardi Gras. And Mardi Gras is this huge thing in St. Louis. I didn't have a set plan for the day. I didn't have set people I was gonna be with. I didn't know where I was gonna be going, and I knew I would have been intoxicated. So I was like, you know what? And I had a panic attack about that because it was an uncertain event, and I knew that. So I decided to step away from that. See, that's an example of something that triggers it. Another thing that triggers it is big crowds. My actually first panic attack I had was at an event where I was in the standing room only, and I was in like the second row, and everyone was pushing me forward, and I was losing my friend who I was there with, and I just had a panic attack. I had to be escorted out by security, and it was probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. So that was kind of when I first put together that I was like, that was an uncertain event, that was a crowded space, I got anxious, I had a panic attack, and there we were. That was scary, and then I realized that that just kept happening. Every time I tried to go somewhere where there was a lot of people, I would freak out, and yeah, and it was just make me anxious. And obviously that didn't stop me from going because I did try, but it definitely didn't make the experience better. And I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, oh, uncertainty triggers your anxiety? You literally moved to Ireland. Correct. And I'm also going to Madrid, which is very uncertain. But to me, it's more just like, I don't really know how to explain it. When I want something, it's totally fine. So like I wanted to go to Ireland, and there we were. I want to go to Madrid, and here we are. So like I know it's gonna be fine. I'll definitely be anxious along the way, but it's more like I know I'm going to be okay because I want this. Like this is something I want. But that brings me to Ireland, which is where anxiety took over my entire life. I wrote a blog post about this. It'll be linked down below. but I have never experienced such bad anxiety as I did second semester of my freshman year of college. And it got to the point where, for me, when I found out I was transferring, that was really when I started getting so anxious, because it wasn't something I wanted, if that makes sense. I didn't want to go to SLU at the time. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was anxious because I was worried the same thing was going to happen in Ireland as it would, whatever. I was worried, so therefore I got very anxious about it. And all first half of second semester, I wasn't eating because I was so anxious. My stomach was hurting, and if I ate, I feel like I would throw up, and I hated the feeling of throwing up, so I wouldn't eat. So I wasn't eating for what seemed like days, and then there was one point where I was in my room by myself, and I wasn't feeling good all day. I was at the mall with Anna and Aoife the morning, and I just knew something was off. And I got home. I'm not gonna cry, I just don't have liquid in my throat. I got back to my apartment, and I almost passed out. I'm really not gonna cry, I'm not sad, I'm just sound like I am. I almost passed out because I hadn't eaten anything in what seemed like 3 days. And that wasn't because that wasn't anything to do with weight, it wasn't anything to do with how I looked. It was genuinely just the feeling of butterflies in my stomach that if I were to eat something, I would throw up, because that's how anxious I was. Another feeling of anxiousness for me is I can't catch my breath, which is a common one. And I would text my mom, I feel like I'm not getting enough air, I feel like I'm not getting enough air. And then I remember one morning, March 3rd, remember it specifically, March 3rd, I just kept taking huge gasps because I felt like I couldn't get enough air. That was awful, and it got to the point where I had lost 22 pounds in about 5 months, which is dangerous, especially since I was already small going into college. So here are a couple side-by-sides of what I looked like at the beginning of the year and when I came home from college. So as you can see, very different. That was when I realized that anxiety is not something that only affects you mentally, it can also affect you physically, even if you don't want it to. And honestly, the moment when I almost fainted in my apartment, I was like, I need to make a change. This is terrible. I was like, this is not you. You are not this person, Becca. You are not letting this take over you. You came to Ireland by yourself, and it's just another change you're gonna have to endure going to SLU, and you're gonna be fine. So I got into a different mindset. Anna and Aoife helped me so much. I was talking to them about it, and they were helping me, and they were helping me gain weight and helping me buy food and helping me snack during the day, and it was honestly such a game changer, because if I didn't have them, I would have come home smaller than I was, and it was very scary. I hated being that small. I despised it. None of my jeans fit, and that's not something oh, I hate being small, I hate losing weight, but I didn't want to lose weight, and to me that was a reminder that I had let anxiety win and take over, and I was like, this isn't happening. So I have gained 13 pounds back, so that's good, but at the time it just was not getting weight on, and we had done blood tests to make sure it wasn't anything vital that was wrong with me. It was just my mind, and your mind is so powerful, and your mind can control pretty much everything you do. So that's obviously something I struggle with, and I'm glad that I can tell you guys, because I've noticed a change from videos before I went to college to videos during college and now, and I just look so different, and my face is so much smaller, and I'm so much smaller, and I don't want you guys seeing that and being like, what happened? So I wanted to explain it firsthand that this is what happened. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but I didn't let that take away from my second semester. As you guys know, I had an amazing second semester. Probably the second half of second semester was better, because that was when I confronted Anna and Aoife, and I was like, I need help, and they helped me and everything. And yeah, so I didn't definitely, anxiety took over my life, which is why I'm telling you guys that you need to kind of switch your brain, and it's so much harder than I'm making it seem, but you need to switch your brain and realize that it's a problem, because to me I was always like, oh, this is always something I've dealt with, I'll be fine, and then I started seeing the physical changes, and I was like, you're not fine, you need to change. What's big for me is that if I'm not getting anxious about something that I usually get anxious about, I'll get anxious about the fact that I'm not getting anxious, if that makes sense. So a big thing for me is just honestly not even thinking about the possibility of being anxious and looking forward to it, if that makes sense. So Madrid, obviously I'm excited to go there, but I know for a fact anxiety is going to be like, why aren't you anxious about this? And I'm going to be like, you know what, I'm not anxious because I'm excited to go there, so let's look forward to this. It's going to be a new adventure, it's going to be fun. So that's something you can do, is kind of just, it's all about tricking your mind into thinking a certain way. I know this was kind of everywhere. It was just something that's been on my mind and been a part of my life that I wanted to tell you guys about, and I'm not one to really share this. This isn't me glorifying anxiety. This isn't me saying I have anxiety, feel bad for me, because there's no reason to. We all have anxieties. We all have things that make us nervous. We all have things that we struggle with. If you have any questions on anything about anxiety or mental illness, please comment them down below, because it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that shouldn't be talked about, because it's really important and can affect you in many different ways. As you guys have saw from those pictures, it really affected me, and I'm here to tell you guys my story because I lived through it, obviously, and I want to tell you guys that it does get better even when it seems like it's really scary and won't. So thank you so much for all the support you guys give me. I feel very comfortable opening up to you guys, which is a scary thing to do, and I'm glad you guys are here, and I have such a positive community to talk to you guys about. So thank you guys so much. I love you, and I will see you guys next Saturday. See ya.